What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel for another Football Manager 2021 feature video. If you missed the last one, do check it out. I'll leave the link in the description below. Today's, I guess, is still a feature video. It's a little more serious, a little more somber. It's a blog post from studio director Miles Jacobson of Sports Interactive about the approach to COVID-19 in FM21. This is something I think quite a lot of us have been waiting quite some time for. I think, is to see exactly what the game was going to do, how things are going to be managed going forward based on our global situation with the pandemic still raging strong as we creep towards the end of October. It's October 20th as I record this, and on the day this blog post was released. So before we have to go in and read it, I'm going to just give a few kind of pre-thoughts before we go through what's actually in here, starting with the options that the team at Sports Interactive actually had in the first place, right? There's really only three different paths they could have gone down anyway. The first was to just ignore that COVID existed. And I know this is something that a few people probably wanted. I know that for a lot of people, myself included, playing Football Manager 2020 at the beginning of the lockdown period, at least the first lockdown period that we all had, was nice. It was an escape. You forgot what was going on in the real world. And I think a lot of people probably wanted a similar thing here from FM21. I'm not sure that would have been a great idea, and I didn't think it was ever going to end up like that. This is a game that prides itself on realism. It's a simulation, right? Their aim is to make this as realistic as possible. And you can't do that by ignoring everything. Right, there's so much that has changed in the world of football that to make a Football Manager game that didn't acknowledge that in some way, to me it wouldn't have come out right. You know what I mean? It's kind of, I don't know. As one that seemed right to me as someone that expects realism from this game, to just ignore that it existed entirely. Miles does talk about in this blog post, and he said before he wants his game to be an escape from the reality of what we have right now as well. So there is a balance there, but I don't think it was ever not going to be there. The second option was to go gung-ho and put it all in there, to have COVID in the game, right? To have players be able to get it, to have matches affected, to have squads affected, to have your players go into isolation, to have, league schedules moved and possibly cancelled because of this virus. And that was never going to happen. I think you could tell by the attitude that the team have had previously. They didn't change anything in FM20, right? They didn't put any updates in there to say, hey, you can get COVID now. It never came into it, and I don't think it was ever going to. I think for as big a reason as any, morally, I don't think they could do it. I wouldn't want to develop a game where a virtual version of a real person, like there's still these models in this game represent real people, right? At least until new gens start coming through. Do you want to be responsible for giving one of them a potentially deadly virus? I couldn't do that. There's no way. I don't think that would have been right. I don't think they could have stomached doing it, and I don't think it's something that any player would want to have to go through. Let alone the logistics that would it bring to the game as well, again, of, is your game going to get cancelled? Is your squad going to go into quarantine? Does that holiday you forward 2 weeks? Are leagues going to change? Or is your season going to be determined on whether your team gets COVID or not? It's too much. It wouldn't have worked. It would have been a horrific step, and I don't think it's one that was even considered for a second by Sports Interactive. I thought that before reading this blog post, and it's basically reaffirmed by reading through it, and we'll go over that once we get further into the post. It's not like with Brexit, where they could kind of guess, like, oh, maybe it won't happen. Maybe it will. Maybe it'll be like this. Maybe these will be the rules. There's an immediate life or death impact that COVID-19 has on the people involved here. Brexit indirectly can have that impact on people. COVID-19 directly does, and that's not something I don't think they were ever willing to impose or impart on the player base and the actual people in the game. And so that really brought us to what seemed like the best option in the first place, and having gone through what Miles has said here, it still is, and that's the kind of a balanced approach. They've put in certain things that make sense. It means that the football side of things is realistic for now. It's a case of the effects of the virus are there in strictly footballing terms. There's no health issues, there's none of that. Strictly football. It's there. And it would have been hard to just ignore it, like I said earlier. I think this was always the best option, and the way they've done it, I don't have any real complaints about what Sports Interactive have done here in terms of the way they're handling it. One thing that people did bring up, and I've seen this in posts since this article came out, was why can't we turn it off? And I've never been involved in developing a game. There's nothing I've ever done. But I can tell that the people that have asked about that also have not been involved in game development. There's a tweet that Miles Jacobson put out to respond to those questions. I'll put it up on screen. I'll read it to you now. It says, "As I'm being asked this question a bit, so no, you can't have an option to turn on or turn off COVID in-game. What you're asking for here is for us to release 2 games with different data and completely different possibilities. Instead, we found the right balance. Making games is hard. Making games during a pandemic is way harder. Asking to double the workload of many of the team, including all of our QA team, isn't something I see as fair or a good idea. Asking for that in these current times, really unfair." And I agree. It's not like in development of the game, sure, maybe on your screen, on the UI, it would be a button that says on and off, right? Behind the scenes, that's not how it works. There are so many fundamentals of what they have coded together and put together that have to be different. It would be essentially like making a completely separate game. If you want a COVID-free Football Manager experience, play FM20. It's still there. It's not going anywhere. That's your COVID-free experience. Download the latest transfer updates. Start in 2020. Go from there. Do it. You're not going to get that in FM21. They can't put in a button to make that happen. It's just not possible. Alright, so I'll go through the post. I'm not going to read it word for word. It'll be up on screen the whole time. You can read it as you go if you'd like. If you want to read it without me talking over or scrolling through, it's available. Put the link to the actual post in the description as well. But I'm going to stop at some kind of important parts as we go. So this kind of top part basically is just about the decisions they were trying to make as they're doing it, how they went back and forward. They weren't going to do anything on FM20. They didn't like people modding COVID into FM20. Neither did I. It seemed pointless. They didn't like it being in there. And then obviously things changed for FM21 because things are different. So we're going to jump here to where it talks about money. So financially, your club will be affected by COVID-19. Your finances will be lower. You will be struggling for money. You're not going to walk into your first year with £100 million to spend on transfers. Some of the big clubs have, and they spent money, and that's come under scrutiny massively in the real world. But particularly clubs that don't have the massive commercial reach and buried finances of big teams, you're going to have issues if you're playing in the EFL. If you're playing in any not top tier of England, Spain, Germany, Italy, you're going to struggle because you don't have that ticket money. People aren't putting the same income into football clubs. They're not getting the chance to. And so you will start with worse finances than you normally would. As the visible knock-on effect will be transfers. You've rewritten chunks of our transfer system to ensure that while superstars and wonder kids will retain their value, FM21 will see more loan-to-buy offers, the value of mid-range players dropping, and clubs in real financial trouble trying to move players on a more regular basis. However, as money comes back into the game over time, the transfer system will adapt and eventually return to some sense of normal. So basically, things will return, so they're not just going to keep these struggles from the beginning. As ticket money comes back in, as TV money comes back in, prize money, your club will recover. But you will start in a difficult situation because that's where it is in real life, and that's the realism they're going for in that situation. Next is about fans. So whether they were going to put supporters in the ground from the start, they have decided yes, they're going to have supporters in the ground at the beginning. I think this is the right decision as well. I think no one really wants to sit and watch FM with empty stands. Normally, if you're sitting with empty stands, your computer's not strong enough to run fans, right? You don't want that to be the case because of COVID. I think we all want to see, supporters back in the stands at games. It's not the same without them. No matter how much fake noise you pump into our TV screens, it's not the same, right? We all want to see it. It'll eventually help with getting money back in. But the big thing is about escapism. He mentions right here. Here's a little escapism. They don't want it to just be, here's real. They still want it to have that way out. And so you will see fans in the stands from the get-go. They could have implemented where they're not there. They could have put stadium bans in place across leagues that expired at a certain point, and they could have been in it. It just didn't need to be. I think they've made the right choice there. Here with leagues, so the start dates, the football calendar is different in the beginning. Again, it says they will revert to normal once maybe a year goes by, maybe 2, I don't know. But they will go back to the way they have been before. Again, I think this is the right idea. It doesn't make sense. The only way they could do, all the leagues starting at the time they normally would is if they ignored COVID entirely, and they're not doing that. I think this is one of those things where if they're going for that simulation experience and that real experience, this is the way they had to do it. So it says further down here, the championship will kick off in September rather than August. Preseason will be 5 to 6 weeks instead of 12, because that's the way it was in real life, even less in the way, but you're going to have to take that into account when you're getting ready for your first season. You have less time to do it. Leagues that did run in some capacity at the end of the pandemic. So I mentioned here the MLS. The MLS ran a tournament. The MLS is back tournament ran during July. You can't participate in that, right? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. In previous editions, you start in the same year that everyone else does. So you would go back to like February and start the MLS season. But you're not doing that. The first time you can start playing, I'm assuming, will be towards the end of 2020, start of 2021 for the new MLS season. With the way that tournament made sense, it was completely different. It just didn't. There was no point. It was a whole different competition. And so there are a lot of leagues where that has been the case, and that's the direction they've decided to go. Down here, we have transfer windows. And so again, season 1, the transfer window will match what it is in real life. So it will end when it ended in real life for teams in the Premier League and things like that. January will still happen, and then next year is back to normal. That's how they see it happening, and that's what is going to happen this time. Match rules will be as they are for this season. Again, season 1, that's the sense of realism. So if a league has 5 subs, that's what they're going to do. It will flip back, but unless, of course, it says here, unless they've indicated the plan is to adopt the new rule for the long term, then they might, continue it in there. But if it's different for this year, that's the way it's going to be. There's a couple of things here as well. It's not anything too groundbreaking. And it does say here, some of these choices may come across as arbitrary, but look to every area individually and the entire game holistically, and we think we've made the correct choices. And honestly, so do I. I think the balance has been struck, and it's been struck well. I think they've done exactly what they should have done in this situation. There's nothing that's jumping out at me that says, that doesn't seem right. Why is that not there, or why is that in there? Was that necessary? To settle on a point here, COVID-19 will not appear as an illness in FM21. Your players will not get COVID-19. If they do, it's because you have downloaded a database and someone else has put it in there. But if you were playing the vanilla version of the game, there is a 0% chance one of your players will catch COVID-19. It will not be there, and it shouldn't be there. And then at the bottom here, there's a few paragraphs about a poll he's put up on Twitter about, so there's the gesture system, which we talked about in our previous video, that has replaced tone. There are going to be handshakes, but now they're wondering if that should be in there because of COVID, whether they should put, it says the elbow bump. So if you want a say in that, you can go ahead on to Miles Jacobson's Twitter profile at MilesSI, and you can vote for handshake or elbow bump, which one is in the game. It lasts for a week. I believe at this point, handshake is winning. I'm not going to vote again, I've already done it. But go on there if you want a say in that. And that's it. That is the overview of the blog post on COVID in Football Manager 2021. I know it's something that I personally have been waiting to hear about for quite some time, and I'm sure I'm not alone. I'm glad it has now been addressed. and I feel a sense of relief that it's happening in the way that it is. They haven't tried to push it all in there, and they haven't ignored it completely. Like I've said throughout this video, I think they've done the right thing. They've made the right decisions here. Let me know what you think about what they've done in the comments below. If you think they should have done something a little differently, if you don't think it should be in there at all, let me know why. Our experiences of the games and our thoughts on it could well be very different. If you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button. I appreciate every single one of you for watching. Join me soon for more FM21 feature reviews. I'll see you next time.